The Michael Berry Show.
Well, Jesse Kelly, I would ask you what you thought about that awful call for which the NFL's senior vice president of officiating placed a phone call to Sean Payton to tell him that they blew the pass interference call that they didn't make, Alberto Riveron. They blew it, and it cost the Saints an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. There was no question the call was missed. There was no question that cost the Saints the game. I would ask you a question about how well Brady played yesterday in the flea flicker in overtime. But, of course, as has made the news, you were at a robotics tournament for your kid.
I was at a robotics tournament, not just there, Michael. I was there for about 8 hours, and that's not an exaggeration. I dropped him at 7:30 in the morning. We walked out of that place, I think, at 4:30 in the afternoon. It might have been 5 o'clock.
You deserve a medal.
I do. I mean, I was already a legend, but now I feel like a hero.
So for folks at home, because most of our listeners, probably 95% of our listeners, are not on Twitter, and that's a good thing. They have lives. But over the course of the weekend, you posted some really, really funny things, and I bet a lot of dads have been there before. And those funny things related to the fact that you were at your kid's robotics tournament and that you're looking around at the other dads and there is the unspoken connection that other other kids are at a football game. We could have been at a football game, but we're at the robotics conference, right?
Yes. And it was obviously extremely tongue-in-cheek, but you can see it on everybody's face. You sit there and watch kids put together Legos for 8 straight hours, you're going to question some life decisions.
Well, the beauty is, so BuzzFeed comes out and absolutely hammers you, and they quote these other people, none of whom know you. They quote these other people as saying, he's an awful father. He's an awful human being. And the funny thing is, if you look at some of the profiles of the people who said this, they're clearly not parents. They're in their early 20s. They have no understanding of what it means to be parents. But you know what I look at this more than anything else? This is the death of comedy. This is why nothing can be funny anymore, because we don't look to laugh. We look for the worst in everything. I thought your robotics comments were hilarious.
Well, it's
might be the only
the
one.
permanent outrage society, Michael. I don't know whether this is a social media thing or whether we've just become so pillow soft as a society that we feel like everything is a personal affront to us. But you're right. It was a bunch of young, single, childless people who don't know. What was great was all the parents who've been there. You've been there, Michael, at youth sports games, at youth events where it's gone on too long and it's boring, but you're there because you love them and you always support them.
Yep.
And you complain about it, and it's fun to crack a couple jokes. But it really is, maybe it's a parenting crisis. Maybe people raise their kids to be too daggone sensitive.
Well, I do hate to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Because by doing this, it ruins what was a funny joke. But if these people don't understand how proud you are of your child and how much you incessantly brag on your kids, and if you actually read the threads of what you've written and how this is almost your backhanded way of bragging on how smart your kid is, but these dumbasses either don't get that or don't want to. And I hate that I have to say that, because now it ruins a good joke, but it really gets to the core of exactly what we saw with these Kentucky kids in D.C. It gets to the core of what BuzzFeed did to Trump about Cohen and, Trump was going to go to prison. It's all just this awful, whiny, bitchy, mean, distrustful kind of commentary. And the truth is, when all is said and done, you're going to have 10,000 more followers than you did before it started.
Oh, it's only been great for me. I mean, BuzzFeed has now attacked me and President Donald Trump in the span of just a few days. So only been great for me. But I really
Are you on some sort of a cricket phone? Because your first word that comes out is awful. Do you have like some pay per month cheap program?
I'll have you know, I have Verizon. I dropped cricket a week ago. I'm doing great now. I'm rolling in the dough.
Hey, did you see the Verizon ads yesterday?
Yeah, I did.
Or
Yeah,
were you at? Did they have the TV on at the robotics conference?
No, but I had to upgrade to Verizon so I could watch television and not pay attention to the robotics tournament. I can watch it on my phone now.
Well, they Peter Berg, who, as you know, is a good friend of mine. He's
Oh,
the one who
gosh,
produced
geez.
Lone Survivor, Friday Night Lights, and all that. He did the two ads for, or he did the ad for Verizon about the team that wouldn't be here. Did you see that?
I did the first responders one, and it was powerful. That was
Oh,
extremely powerful.
oh, wow! It was man. He did now after Lone Survivor, he went and did Deepwater Horizon because you'll remember, as I told you, he was making that movie when he came back to Houston to spend a weekend at Marcus's house, and of course I went and drank Pappy Van Winkle with him, and then from there he went to Boston and did the Patriot Day movie, and I guess this is where
Yes,
he did
Michael. Yes, I know about you hanging out with Peter Berg. I know.
okay, it's kind of a big deal.
You know, by the way, we never think about first responders unless there's like a big hurricane. I mean, we thought about them during Harvey, but these guys go through stuff like that every day. You ever sit down and talk to one of these guys? Every day they save lives. They see the most horrible things. It's like a combat veteran. They have seen and experienced some of the most awful things, and they just go out there and save lives. And it's not like they make a lot of money doing it.
Well, you happen to be a combat veteran, and you and I have had conversations because of the work both of us do with Camp Hope, and some of the folks that we know who've really suffered from PTSD. And if we understand that not just having bullets whizzing over your head, as you have, some of the things you've seen, and we've talked about your own coping mechanisms, and it's something that you've not talked a lot about. But we have talked about, and I hope one day you'll be public about that. When you came back, sitting in a room with the blinds down for days on end, not knowing where to go, what to do, and this sort of fatigue that comes over you. If we recognize that some of what you saw can create a paralysis in a dark place for you and for people that end up at Camp Hope, imagine, as you say, what happens when you pull a family out of a fire that they don't make it. Imagine seeing children. I mean, it really is. It's not just that they show up to work every day. It's the things they witness and go through. It is. It's heroic, but it's also tough. There's a toll to be paid.
There is a heavy toll to be paid, and they have their own ways of coping with it, and some of those ways are healthy and some are not, but they have to find a way to cope with it. And you mentioned it. What they always bring up to me when I talk to them is the children. It's hard enough, seeing the blood and the guts and things like that on adults, but when you see a child mangled in a car wreck, that is not something you just get over after dinner and go have a good night's sleep. That is, even the hardest person in the world has to process that.
Somebody had to show up and
every
ID.
day.
Somebody had to show up and ID Jasmine Barnes's body. I want to continue this interview, but your phone is so awful. Hold on just a minute. We're going to call you. Maybe you have a landline? It's terrible. It's the worst phone call ever. Jesse Kelly will be our guest coming up. So, Jesse, I have rewritten the headline that BuzzFeed wrote about you. Marine combat veteran.
Play.
What's that?
You should just let that music play, by the way. I love Hank Williams.
It was
Jr.
done. Excuse me. It's so stupid. Marine combat veteran Jesse Kelly mocked while parenting by Buzzfeed. What amounted to dad jokes and bragging on his brainy kid while actually laughing at himself led Buzzfeed to attempt to make an attentive, loving dad look like a monster. Failed again, Ben. I hate having to explain the joke. And that's really what this has come down to. Because you have to deconstruct a joke into its component parts, which saps it of what makes it funny. And what we're left with is the inability to laugh. I mean, the honest truth is, as you've noted, we've all been at an event for our kids that we thought to ourselves, good grief, this is the worst thing ever. Dear Lord, take me now. It's not because we hate our kids. It's a way to cope. It's a way to laugh about it. Good grief.
Yes, but here's the difference, Michael. You hate having to explain the joke because you still have some decency. I get a perverse pleasure out of not explaining the joke and watching a bunch of people not get the joke and whip themselves up into some absurd, outraged media frenzy over the whole thing.
Never
I think
lose
that's
that.
the funniest thing. I think that's the
Never
funniest thing in the
lose
world.
that. That's what makes you special. That's why people love you, because you're willing to do what they're not. When the media demands that you apologize, your unwillingness to do it, for most people, they would. They would just apologize and make it stop. But the unwillingness to do it is what people admire. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Well, people have to understand, Michael, and this is what people don't get. For one, I don't care. So setting me aside, you can't make it stop. They don't want your apology. They want to feel like they have power over you. They're bullies. That's what they feel like. So even if you're tempted to delete it, apologize, say how sorry you are and how wrong you are, that won't be good enough for them. They hate you anyway, so you might as well have fun with it. Life's too short.
I received several emails during the break from listeners who said, okay, I got it, and I didn't know who the guy was, but I think I'm getting it. What about his wife and son? Now, I know your wife is your biggest fan and finds you to be as funny as I do. How about your son? How would he react if he saw this? Does he know about it?
He knows. We were laughing about it yesterday. I read the whole thing to him. He doesn't care. I'm not raising a couple of thin-skinned little girls. I'm raising men. He knows. We joked about it. We've always joked about it, and we always will joke about it. I don't hold things back from my kids. My wife was laughing while pretending to be horrified over the whole thing. We're having a blast. It's everyone else who's mad.
You know, likewise, this kid is obviously a very brainy kid, and we've had this conversation off air, and that makes you extremely proud. And you know, you always brag that you have almost 3 years of community college at Pima Community College, and it's a very self-deprecating style of humor, and there is a pride, and I do it. There is a pride that your kid is good in academics, which you admit you weren't, right? But if you bragged on it in that way, it would reduce the whole thing. So you do it in this sort of meathead sort of way, and it makes it very charming. But what's frustrating about that whole thing is to suggest that you're somehow not a good dad, and there's not much you can respond to this because it'd be awkward if you did, but I know you, and I know you're as attentive a dad as there is out there. And most of these people out there criticizing are the Baldwin kind that call their kid a rude, thoughtless little pig, and here you are at your kid's event all weekend. That's what really makes me mad about the whole thing.
Well, for one, if you're going to talk about my education level, it's an accredited community college.
Yes,
Michael.
of course.
It's not just any community college.
Yes.
It's accredited.
Yes.
And I almost have enough credits for an associate's degree. But you talk, in talking about kids, to be honest, what they do, what my sons do now, is they give me moments where I feel dumb. Right. They know things, and they know how to do things that I've never known how to do, not even when I was their age. I can't even blame it on too much bourbon. So I don't know how they got all that, probably just because I'm a great father, but right. It's amazing.
Osmosis. But, you know, if that group really wanted to make, hey, you've also commented of the same kid who's clearly very brainy that he's an awful athlete, and you have a lot of fun with that. They should make a point of that, too.
I've actually put the videos up of him. In fact, I don't think it's possible to miss a baseball by more than he misses the baseball when the pitcher throws it at him. I actually need to take him down and get his eyes checked out.
Where were we recently that your wife called and she was at his basketball game? It was the first basketball game you've missed. And she said, good Lord, you are going to have to work with this kid. He is the worst basketball player ever.
I think we were at the RCC that night. And look, he's terrible at it. He doesn't love it. It's not his thing, and that's fine. I've never been that dad. It's fun to laugh about it. I've never been that dad who needs to live vicariously through my kids. Right. They are how God made them. Whatever they're good at, God bless them. Go out, have a great life.
You know, I honestly believe that one of the things at play here is that people who've shared your exact emotion, oh my God, I'm at a robotics conference and this is awful. I think that people whose kids were in scouts and the scout leader was over the top or their kid was in D&D, or their kid was on the chess team, or their kid was in some activity that they don't identify with at all, and they felt they felt exactly what you felt. You giving voice to that makes them have to confront what made them uncomfortable. They pretended it wasn't the case, but in fact, everybody felt what you felt. I think that's what's at play.
Could be. It could be, and I'll tell you what else it might be.
Jesse, please don't wait so long. After I make a point, that long gap, that's good for your show, but that doesn't work for my show.
Yeah, but I'm waiting for you to get to a decent point, and I'm
but I
hoping
need you,
maybe you'll fill that in at the end.
When I pause, you go.
Yes, but I'm hoping for your sake that you'll come to a decent point I can respond to. I'm giving you a chance to be your best, Michael.
Well, I don't know. I don't like a long break. Ramon does. I don't know if you've been listening to the show already, but when I finish a point and I want the audio played, Ramon waits about 10 seconds for the audio to play. That's low production values.
No, it's being dramatic. I like to build up that suspense so the audience can just hang and just say, oh, man, Jesse's the best. I can't wait to see what he comes up with now.
Did you see what happened with these Kentucky kids at the Capitol this weekend?
Now, that actually did make me extremely angry. The internet piled on a bunch of high school kids, and it turns out they did nothing wrong. And we had people actually digging through their high school yearbooks, Michael. That's disgusting.
Well, it's Brett Kavanaugh all over again.
It was. It was. These people destroy lives. You asked me earlier why I don't apologize. That's why. Screw them.
You know, it's going to come to the point that people are going to have to understand that when you come under attack, that when you hear a story, you can't jump out and have an opinion that day. People need to calm down and not put gas on the fire, because more often than not, as your story, as these others, there's going to be more to it. Jesse Kelly, thanks for being our guest. Don't stop being you.
That was great.
MichaelBerry.com